Harper One and HarperAudio present The Writer's Library, The Authors You Love on the Books That Changed Their Lives by Nancy Pearl and Jeff Schwager. Read by Nancy Pearl, Jeff Schwager, X.E. Sands, Dominic Hoffman, Eileen Stevens, Piper Goodeve, Andrew Eiden, Lameece Issaq, Rick Adamson, J.D. Jackson, Ryan Doe, Tim Andrés Pabon, Emily Wu Zeller, Richard Ford, Luis Alberto Urrea, Vendela Vida, Laurie Frankel, and Siri Hustvedt. This is Jeff Schwager. To Joe Pearl and Megan Muir, without whom this book and so much else would not have been possible.
Foreword by Susan Orlean. In Senegal, when someone dies, you say that his or her library has burned. I don't know how I came across this phrase, or what I had Googled that led me to it, but as soon as I saw it, I was intrigued. So I scribbled it on an index card and hung it on the wall beside my desk. At the time, I was in the middle of writing about the largest library fire in American history, which occurred in 1986 and nearly destroyed the Los Angeles Central Library. The afternoon I stumbled on the phrase, I was, as usual, puzzling over the fundamentals of my subject. Why did I care? Why should anyone care about a library burning? If books are just paper and ink, and in the modern era can be reproduced easily, why do we feel the loss of even one book so acutely? Why do books seem so human, so personal? What makes them feel almost alive, as if a book is a person sitting right beside us, whispering a marvelous story in our ear? These are the same questions that propelled Nancy Pearl and Jeff Schwager to undertake The Writer's Library, asking writers what books whispered most persistently in their ears. The Senegalese phrase puzzled me almost as much as it fascinated me. Of course, I love books. The books that have meant the most to me have quite literally changed me. But I still had trouble picturing myself as a human library. Furthermore, I didn't see what death and a library fire had in common, and yet something about the phrase stuck with me, nagged at me. Day after day, I stared at that index card and tried to figure out what it meant. I read everything that threaded a direct line from bound manuscript to human existence. My favorite observation came from John Milton, who declared in 1868 that books are not absolutely dead things, but do contain a potency of life in them to be as active as that soul was whose progeny they are. I certainly understood that potency of life. I couldn't bear to throw a book out, even if it was falling apart, and I felt that each book on my shelves had a radiant presence, like a familiar friend. Indeed, books have the capacity to seem more alive than any other inanimate object. They inflect the way we feel and think. For writers especially, the love of a particular book can be seminal, as Nancy and Jeff learn. For Jonathan Latham, one such book is James Baldwin's Another Country. For Maza Mengistu, The Corpse Washer by Sinan Antoon shook her to her core. For Andrew Sean Greer, Tales of the City by Armistead Maupin lives and breathes. For an 8-year-old Donna Tartt, her grandmother reading her Charles Dickens's Oliver Twist aloud opened her mind to the full force of literature. But do we in some way resemble books? Do we embody the books we've read throughout our lives? That seemed the harder part of the equation. In the end, the answer made itself clear to me in a heartbreaking way. My mother was responsible for introducing me to the love of books and libraries, and she made sure I was as besotted with them as she was. When I was a child, she took me to the library several times a week, and she treated those visits as a sort of hallowed ritual, and the books we borrowed were as precious as relics. She dreamed of being a librarian. In fact, almost every time we drove home from the library, she punctuated the trip with a long sigh and the announcement that if she could have chosen any profession in the world, she would have been a librarian. The library suited her perfectly, because unlike
Sample complete. Ready to continue?